Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the San Francisco Board of Supervisors meeting of May 12, 2015. Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Thank you, Madam President. Supervisor Avalos. Avalos not present. President Breed.
Here.
Breed present. Supervisor Campos.
Present.
Campos present. Supervisor Christensen.
Present.
Christensen present. Supervisor Cohen.
Present.
Cohen present. Supervisor Farrell. Farrell present. Supervisor Kim. Kim not present. Supervisor Marr.
Present.
Marr present. Supervisor Tang.
Present.
Tang present. Supervisor Wiener. Wiener present. Supervisor Yee.
Present.
Yee present. Madam President, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, can you please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
one
nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, and we are now joined by Supervisor Avalos. Colleagues, are there any changes to the April 7th board meeting minutes? Seeing no changes, is there a motion to approve the minutes? Motioned by Supervisor Campos, seconded by Supervisor Christensen. Can we take those without objection? Without objection, our board meeting minutes will pass after public comment. Okay, Madam Clerk, can you please read our special order?
The first item of business is the policy discussion between the Honorable Mayor Edwin Lee and eligible members of the Board of Supervisors. The Mayor may provide initial remarks for up to 5 minutes. The President will then recognize the eligible supervisor. Follow-up questions are in order as long as the entire discussion does not exceed 5 minutes per supervisor.
Okay, welcome, Mr. Mayor. You have opening remarks at this time.
Thank you, I do, President Breed. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. My State of the City address this past January, I talked about a bold vision for our city, and that included bringing an affordable housing bond to voters this November. We are, as a city, in the midst of a housing crisis, and we know that our city is growing in population as well as jobs, and we need to build more housing faster. And that housing needs to serve low-income families, fix our dilapidated public housing, and create home ownership opportunities if we are truly to remain a city for everyone. And so today I'm excited to join the members of our board to introduce a $250 million affordable housing general obligation bond to take to the voters this November. And I want to thank my first 6 members of the Board of Supervisors who have co-sponsored and share our vision for an affordable city where everyone belongs. I want to just say thank you to Supervisors Cohen, Farrell, Tang, Wiener, Christensen, and Breed. And if the voters approve this bond, it will be the largest affordable housing bond in our city's history. In addition to the below-market housing we traditionally build, this bond will also address groups of San Franciscans who need and deserve our attention: public housing residents and middle-class residents. It will provide housing opportunities to thousands of San Francisco families who are struggling to get by in an expensive city, and it will fulfill our promise made a generation ago to rehabilitate and rebuild public housing. We can do all of this without raising taxes. Last year, I set an ambitious yet achievable goal to build or rehabilitate 30,000 homes by 2020 and to ensure that 50% of those are affordable to low-income and middle-class families. And with this bond, we can speed up our rebuild of Sunnydale by at least as many as 5 years and create a solid funding plan for the mature development. We'll pump more money into our affordable housing pipeline, moving on much more aggressive timelines to deliver below-market rate units to families who need them. We'll seek out, acquire, and rehabilitate rent-controlled buildings at risk of speculation, protecting tenants and stabilizing neighborhoods. And we create a first-ever program for middle-class families, middle-class rental units that address a need that has been too long ignored. We'll also expand our very successful Teacher Next Door and first-time homebuyer down payment assistance programs. The 2015 housing bond is a crucial component of my $1.1 billion 5-year affordable housing response plan to build, rehab, and preserve over 10,700 permanently affordable homes for low and middle income families. Between local, state, and federal sources of funding, we will have built we would have built a $2.7 billion pipeline over the next 20 years to address our city's ongoing affordability crisis. And if passed, this $250 million bond will be the largest affordable housing bond ever in the city, and it is just one part of a much larger affordability agenda to build and preserve housing in San Francisco. I do want to thank the finance and housing experts and the community who came together to help craft this strong proposal. It's my goal that we have one housing bond that we can all support this November, and I welcome the support from all the other supervisors as well. So let's get on to Supervisor Tang's question.
Okay, at this time, I'd like to recognize Supervisor Katie Tang from District 4.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Mayor Lee, for being here today. So my question to you is one that is not quite new, but is something that would like to have an update on. So one of the biggest complaints that we hear from small business owners, is that the city's permitting process is too difficult. They cite issues such as the high cost for permits, as well as the lengthy amount of time it takes to make it through the process. Additionally, small business owners have expressed that when their project involves review by multiple departments, in addition to planning and Department of Building inspection, that the process becomes even more lengthy and unpredictable. Given the importance of our small business community, what is your office and the relevant city departments doing to address these permitting challenges? We want to ensure that great neighborhood-serving businesses can be set up and continue to thrive in San Francisco.
Thank you, Supervisor Tang, for the question and for being a partner on pursuing good government reforms that support our city's small businesses. We all agree that small businesses are at the heart and soul of our city's economy, and that's why I have made supporting our small businesses a priority since day one. From new small business loan funds to my Invest in Neighborhoods program initiative, we are working across the city to help small businesses owners start, stay, and succeed in San Francisco. Following through on a promise I made in my campaign to leverage technology to make government more effective and efficient, we launched the San Francisco Business Portal in November of last year. The San Francisco Business Portal is an award-winning online tool that helps small businesses owners understand what they need to do to open and operate a business in San Francisco. We collected and consolidated information from 18 departments on more than 400 different permits and provided a roadmap for how to navigate the process. We packaged it in an easy-to-use website and made it available in 9 different languages. Thank you, Supervisor Tang, and to many of you on the board for your support on the success of this ambitious project. But this is just the beginning. We want small businesses to complete their forms online. We're working on a feature that allows small businesses owners to create a personal account on the portal that could one day be a hub for all of their interactions with the city. And while we've made it easier to understand and navigate the process, we must make the process itself better. That's why for the past 6 months, an interagency team of permitting departments has been working with the Controller's Office to develop recommendations for significantly improving the permit application process as a whole. And this report will be completed later this month with implementation of the recommendations to follow. And the focus of this report is on food and beverage-related businesses, given their complexity and the number of permits that are required. But it's my goal to streamline the permit process for all small businesses across the city. I understand and I know that small business owners' time is valuable, and an hour standing in line at City Hall is an hour they could be spent on their businesses helping a customer. And we'll never take our small business for granted. That's why I look forward to continuing to work with you, Supervisor, to ensure that our small businesses across the city continue to grow and to thrive and succeed in our city. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for being here with us today. Okay, with that, we're going to move on to our regular business. Madam Clerk, can you please call item number 2?
Item 2 is an ordinance to amend the building, administrative, planning, and police codes to require attenuation of exterior noise for new residential structures, acoustical analysis, and field testing, to authorize the Entertainment Commission to hold a hearing on proposed residential use near a place of entertainment and require the project sponsor to participate, to authorize the Commission to measure notice conditions and provide comments and recommendations to the Planning Department and Department of Building Inspection, to require the disclosure to lessees and purchasers of potential noise and other inconveniences associated with nearby places of entertainment, to require the Planning Department and Commission to consider noise issues when reviewing proposed residential projects, and to specify factors concerning noise for the Entertainment Commission to review when considering granting a place of entertainment permit and making the required findings.
Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll?
On item 2, Supervisor Cohen.
Aye.
Cohen, aye. Supervisor Farrell.
Aye.
Farrell, aye. Supervisor Kim. Kim, aye. Supervisor Marr.
Aye.
Marr, aye. Supervisor Tang.
Aye.
Tang, aye. Supervisor Wiener.
Aye.
Wiener, aye. Supervisor Yee.
Aye.
Yee, aye. Supervisor Avalos. Avalos, aye. Supervisor Breed.
Aye.
Breed, aye. Supervisor Campos.
Aye.
Campos, aye. Supervisor Christensen.
Aye.
Christensen, aye. There are 11 ayes.
This item finally passes unanimously. Madam Clerk, without objection, I'd like to skip over item number 3 for now and go to item number 4.
Item 4 is an ordinance to deappropriate $9.6 million from permanent salaries, fringe benefit expenses, and power for resale, and appropriate approximately $9.6 million to overtime in the Sheriff's Department, the Department of Emergency Management, Fire Department, the Department of Public Health, and the Public Utilities Commission's operating budgets to support the department's projected increases in overtime, and placing approximately $92,000 of the Sheriff's appropriation on Controller's Reserve. And Madam President, this ordinance requires 2/3 vote of all members of the Board of Supervisors as it applies to the $105,000 portion to the Public Utilities Commission.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Colleagues, can we take this item? Same house, same call. Without objection, this ordinance is passed unanimously on the first reading. Next item, please.
Item 5 is an ordinance to authorize the Public Utilities Commission to use pro forma agreements to purchase and sell electricity and related products and services to operate the city's municipal electric utility and community choice aggregation program, authorizing the general manager of the PUC in such agreements to deviate from certain otherwise applicable requirements of city law under certain circumstances, and authorizing the PUC within specified parameters to approve agreements with terms in excess of 10 years or requiring expenditures of $10 million or more for renewable and greenhouse gas-free power and related products and services.
Colleagues, there's a minor amendment that I'd like to add to this particular item. On page 11, beginning on line 11, adding on number 6, that within 30 days of any agreements and or contracts authorized by this legislation being fully executed by all parties, the final agreement or contract shall be provided to the clerk of the board for inclusion in the official file. And I was wondering if any member of the board objects to that. Okay, so I move that item. Is there a second? Seconded by Supervisor Marr. We will take that amendment without objection. The amendment passes. And on the underlying item as amended, can we take this item, same house, same call? Without objection, this ordinance is passed on the first reading as amended. Madam Clerk, can you call item number 6, please?
Item 6, resolution to approve a lease agreement between Menzies Aviation and the city for approximately 50,000 square feet of use space in Westfield Cargo Building, number 632, and related areas on Plot 9, with an estimated minimum rent of approximately $7.55 million for a 3-year term, with a 1-year option to extend.
Colleagues, can we take this item, same house, same call? Without objection, this resolution is adopted unanimously. Item 7, please.
Item 7, resolution to approve the termination of lease agreement between the Body Shop and the city for boarding area F, pharmacy, health, and beauty store lease for a term to commence following board approval.
Same house, same call. Without objection, this resolution is adopted unanimously. Item number 8, please.
Item 8, resolution to authorize a 5-year option to extend the lease with BRCP at 1390 Market, LLC, for approximately 10,000 square feet of space at 1390 Market Street for a total rent of approximately $480,000 in the initial year for use by the Department of Children, Youth, and their families through November 30th, 2020.
Same house, same call. Without objection, this resolution is adopted unanimously. Item 9, please.
Item 9, resolution to retroactively authorize the Department of Public Health to accept and expend an approximate $213,000 grant from the Regents of the University of California to participate in a preterm birth initiative project.
Same House, same call. Without objection, this resolution is adopted unanimously. Item number 10.
Item 10 is an ordinance to amend the Health Code to comprehensively revise the regulation of massage practitioners, establishments, out-call services, and sole practitioners by eliminating the exemption for massage businesses that employ solely massage practitioners certified by the California Massage Therapy Council from permitting and regulatory authority of the Department of Public Health, to increase the number of instructional hours required for practitioner permits, to deny massage permits to applicants convicted of criminal acts related to human trafficking, to align attire requirements with state law, to incorporate and enforce state human trafficking posting requirements into local law, to revise the timing and criteria for various permits, to update, specify permit application and annual license fees, and making other changes to enhance clarity and promote compliance. And Madam President, the question is, shall this ordinance be passed on first reading?
Thank you. And should we call these two items, item 10 and 11, together?
Item 11 is an ordinance to amend the Planning Code to require that massage establishments, with certain exceptions, obtain a conditional use permit, to establish a legitimization program, to make conforming amendments, affirming the Planning Department's California Environmental Quality Act determination, and making the required findings.
Okay, Supervisor Tang.
Thank you very much, colleagues. I know that many of you have spent a lot of time chatting with me about these two items. For both of these items, whether it's the amendment to the Health Code or the Planning Code, we're really trying to give our city departments the additional tools that they need to properly regulate activities happening in our massage establishments, some of which is not actually massage that is happening in there. I know that this is a citywide issue that touches upon all of our districts, and I know that one of the main components is the requirement for the conditional use permit process moving forward for establishment of new massage establishments. We had worked very closely with our planning department and our Department of Public Health to ensure that those existing businesses that are already in operation, as long as they can prove certain things, they can continue in operation. But really, our goal is to make sure that moving forward, we can have all of the establishments within our system to be able to properly track and enforce. We had run into some issues when, in 2009, state law had changed and created an entirely different set of permitting system, and essentially thereby creating a two-part system, a dual permitting system within San Francisco. And so I do want to take this opportunity to thank a couple of people who worked really hard on this legislation. Deanna Keyson from my office, who has been answering questions almost daily about the legislation. Cindy Comerford from DPH. Diego Sanchez from Planning Department. Our department and the Commission on Status of Women. And of course, all the stakeholders who were part of this process and who, although we do share disagreements on some components of the legislation, they still did provide us with very good suggestions that we tried our very best to incorporate into this package of legislation. So with that, I also know that the Small Business Commission had expressed some concerns about the CU process, but we do feel it is a really important way for us to, again, properly enforce our massage establishments moving forward. I know that in Land Use Committee, Supervisor Wiener had recommended some follow-up amendments to come, and we are very interested in working with his office to do so. And I know that he'll probably take some time to explain what those are. But in any case, I want to thank my colleagues for, again, listening to me explain in depth what this legislation is, and urge your support on this package.
Thank you, Supervisor Tang. Supervisor Yee.
Thank you, President Bree. I just want to, first of all, I want to thank Supervisor Tang for taking leadership on this issue. I know that she personally and her office has been working on this issue for a very long time. So she's correct that I believe that the issue that she's describing does hit probably every district and impacts San Francisco altogether. And I really appreciate the fact that, because this is a gray area where there's really some many legitimate masseuses that do this as a legitimate business. And, well, let's see what I was going to say. And And yet, there's always going to be people that will abuse the rules and turn it into something else. So I'm really glad that you're, taking this head on, and also with the sensitivity of existing people that are doing this as a legitimate lifestyle, and trying to make a living, because I know that there are many masseuses, including my late sister who was a masseuse, that was very legitimate. And so I thank you, and if I could be added as a co-sponsor, I would love to be.
Thank you, Supervisor Yee. Supervisor Weiner.
Thank you very much, Madam President, and thank you to Supervisor Tang and her office for, I know, doing an awful lot of work around this. And I think it's now multiple generations of District 4 supervisors who have worked on this issue. It is a very challenging one, which is why it's, I think, taken several iterations. And I know it's ping-ponged back and forth between San Francisco and Sacramento, and here we are today. I think that there are two reasons why this has been so challenging. I mean, we know we have a significant problem in San Francisco around human trafficking. It's actually embarrassing and depressing that San Francisco, this progressive bastion, is at one of the epicenters in our country of human trafficking, not just around these fake massage parlors that aren't really massage establishments, but are actually human trafficking establishments, but certainly well beyond that. And we know that in San Francisco and the Bay Area, we have a real problem, and I think it's important to address that. We've heard a lot of feedback from the massage community, and that has made it a really challenging issue, because the massage therapy community has, I think, understandably been concerned that they're being somehow swept in with these human traffickers, when we know that there are so many 100% legitimate, professional, wonderful massage therapy establishments out there, and so many great practitioners. And I know that no one is sweeping them in, but I can understand also why they sort of feel like they're being grouped in with these really horrible people who are trafficking other human beings. And then there is the other issue of it is so challenging to start and grow a small business in San Francisco, and the conditional use process is a really challenging one, especially for smaller businesses. And so I very much understand the concern about we're a legitimate business. We hate human traffickers as much as anyone, and we're being forced because of these horrible actors to go into a conditional use process. And so I very much understand those concerns, and I think it's important for us to acknowledge that there are so many completely legitimate, wonderful massage therapy practitioners out there who are helping people heal and stay healthy, and who should not in any way be confused with these fronts for human trafficking. And so I want to thank Supervisor Tang for some of the amendments that she made in terms of grandfathering and so forth, and helping our existing businesses. As I mentioned in committee, we are going to work on trailing legislation, do it in a collaborative way with the massage community, with Supervisor Tang. And I can't guarantee that any of these are going to succeed, but we are going to consider them and work on them and see if we can make them succeed. And just in brief, the issues that we are going to work on. One is to change the title of not just calling it a massage establishment, but making it clear that this is a health-related profession. Also, with the issue of currently, if you're a massage establishment in a location where your rent gets jacked up or you get evicted and you have to move, seeing if it's possible that move would not trigger a new conditional use. In addition, the legislation that we're voting on today exempts solo massage practitioners from having to seek a conditional use, and also allows up to 4 solo practitioners to co-locate together without having to get a conditional use. However, if you are a solo massage practitioner who co-locates with a chiropractor or an acupuncturist, you do have to get a conditional use, and seeing if we can mirror the 4 solo practitioner exemption to apply where there's a chiropractor or acupuncturist therapists, physical therapists, et cetera, who's co-located as well. I have also made a formal request to the Planning Commission to study whether the expedited conditional use process can be applied to massage therapists. And so with that, I will be voting for the legislation today, but we do have continuing work to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Weiner. Colleagues, can we take these items, same house, same call? Without objection, these ordinances are passed unanimously on the first reading. Madam Clerk, we're going to skip over our 3 o'clock special order and move to item number 14.
Item 14 was considered by the Rules Committee at a special meeting on Monday, May 11th, and was recommended as a committee report with a new title. It's a motion to confirm the Rules Committee nomination to reappoint Mr. L. Julius Turman to the Police Commission, term ending April 30th, 2019.
Supervisor Weiner.
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you to the Rules Committee for its work on this nomination. I am strongly supporting the reappointment of Commissioner Turman. I have known him in many capacities for many, many years. I think I first met him through Supervisor Campos back in the 1990s. And he is someone who has done such incredible work for the community in a lot of different areas. It was an inspired appointment when this board appointed him to the Police Commission 4 years ago, and since then he has really comported himself in a very professional way. He has listened to all sides in an area that can be very controversial and very divisive at times, and I think he has credibility with a lot of different communities, and he deserves reappointment, and I will be supporting that appointment today.
Thank you. Supervisor Cohen.
Thank you very much. I serve on the Rules Committee and had an opportunity to listen to Commissioner Julius Turman basically make the case as to why he should be reappointed. And I'm delighted that he got out of the Rules Committee with a positive recommendation. And I am wholeheartedly supporting Commissioner Julius Turman. I have found him to be, in the last 4 years that I have known him as in the form of a commissioner, to be thoughtful and more importantly, to be very principled. He's very fair and he's very balanced, and I hope that you will also join me in supporting him today.
Thank you, Supervisor Cohen. Supervisor Campos.
Thank you, Madam President. I'd like to begin by thanking the Rules Committee for their work on this very important reappointment. I think that a lot of credit goes to you for focusing on this reappointment. I think that there are very important issues about our police department and law enforcement in general that have been raised over the last few weeks. And I think it was really appropriate for us to have an in-depth conversation about what's happening. With respect to Commissioner Turman, I have known, as Supervisor Weiner said, I've known him for a very, very long time. And I think that he has demonstrated in the last 4 years why those of us who supported him supported his appointment to the Police Commission. As has been said, he has the ability to listen to both sides, to weigh evidence carefully, and to call it as he sees it. And I think that level of independence is really needed on the Police Commission. And I actually think that the level of scrutiny that he received in this process also gives him a mandate to push for more transparency and accountability, which is badly needed. And it's not just that it's important to have the perspective of a gay African-American man, but I think that someone who understands the importance of law enforcement to community and the importance of community trusting law enforcement is badly needed. And so very happy and pleased to support the reappointment of Commissioner Turman. Thank you, Commissioner Turman, for a great job.
Thank you. Supervisor Avalos.
Thank you, President Breed. So much of my time on the Board of Supervisors, I've been serving as a member of the Budget Committee, and so the Rules Committee has been a place where it's been a real high level for me of learning about people's participation in government and our commissions, especially looking at when it was Ike Kwan that came before us for the Public Utility Commission, or various members have come before us who want to apply for the Veterans Commission. I've seen the time as that was interviewed interviews and meeting with them to really talk about policy and what people's interest is as citizens getting involved in city government. And I was very, very impressed with Julius Terman. I actually had delayed the appointment so that we can actually use the time right now, especially when there's so much controversy that's swirling around the police department, to really have a really strong conversation, dialogue about what kind of qualities we want to have in a commissioner. And I had the conversation with Julius Terman and was just very, very impressed with what his work has been up to now and where he wants to go. His ideas around what community policing should look like, what transparency within the department should look like, what kind of training officers should need were things that I thought were really powerful. And if he's coming in and he's actually had these conversations, he's going to be that much more emboldened to actually do the work of helping to create that level of accountability within the police department that is a little bit adrift right now with all the controversy that's swirled around it. So I just want to say thank you, colleagues, for considering the time that we spent in approving his reappointment, and I really feel that we're putting forward a very high-quality person who's going to be doing great work on the Police Commission. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Kim.
Thank you. I will just also concur with a lot of what has been said about Commissioner Terman. I've been really impressed over the last 4 years by his incredible thoughtfulness, but also just how he really dives into the policy work, his understanding of police general orders. He clearly spent a lot of time investing, understanding this department and how it works, and I think that's incredibly important for any commissioner. But in particular, we know that our commissioners are unpaid and work full-time already, and so it really takes a level of dedication to be able to demonstrate that work ethic, but also that leadership. I should also say that, with this commission in general, we've not only seen unprecedented support for the police department and improving the police department, whether it means revenue, additional academy classes, or even body cameras, but we've also seen unprecedented accountability come from this commission in regards to the police department. And I think that type of leadership is courageous, but also important. We need to ensure that our police department has the resources, the trainings, the equipment that they need in order to be effective in making our city safer. And we also need to make sure that we are holding this department accountable to keeping our city safe. And I think that Commissioner Terman has played a big role in being a part of that, and I will be supporting his reappointment today.
Thank you. And seeing no other names on the roster, I just want to say thank you to Supervisor Avalos and Supervisor Tang and Cohen for holding a special meeting. We all know how important these appointments are, not only to this board, but to the entire city. When we make an appointment, especially one to the Police Commission, we definitely want to make sure that we are putting the right person in place, whether we are appointing or reappointing. And I think that with Mr. Terman, we have a great commissioner, one who's committed to the city, one who's committed to justice, one who's committed to holding the department accountable. And I really appreciate meeting with him and getting his perspective and hearing about all the work that he's done. And so I think that we're going to have a commissioner who I think is a great commissioner continue to do good work for the department on behalf of the city. And so with that, colleagues, can we take this item, same house, same call? Without objection, this motion is adopted unanimously. Madam Clerk, can we please go to roll call for introductions?
Supervisor Cohen is the first supervisor to introduce new business.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Colleagues, today I'm introducing a resolution in support of Assembly Bill 775. It's called the Reproductive Fact Act. It's authored by Assemblywoman Autumn Burke as well as Assemblyman David Chu. Now, this piece of state legislation is a complement to the ordinance I authored back in 2003, which regulated the false and deceptive advertising practices of crisis pregnancy centers. I'm pleased to report that earlier this year, a federal district court judge upheld the ordinance as constitutional. Today, there are an estimated 200 licensed and unlicensed crisis pregnancy centers in California. Our experience locally and the experience of many throughout the state of California is that these crisis pregnancy centers, also known as CPCs, deliberately provide false and misleading information about reproductive care options. These centers fabricated links between abortion and breast cancer, infertility and mental illness, and some have even misrepresented themselves as licensed health care providers. These CPCs are also disproportionately targeting low-income women and women of color living in rural areas with false information about the reproductive health care choices that Medi-Cal will cover. Assembly Bill 775 will require licensed facilities to provide a notice of health care rights to their clients in multiple languages so women seeking services will know what is truly available to them. This legislation will also require unlicensed facilities to state in their marketing materials and advertising that they do not have licensed healthcare providers on site. The power of a woman's constitutionality protected right to choose is only fully realized when she has accurate and truthful information. And AB 775 will be the first state law requiring the distribution of accurate health care information to women looking for reproductive health care services, and it deserves San Francisco's full support. So I hope that you will join me in supporting this resolution today. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor.
The rest I submit, Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Supervisor Cohen. Supervisor Farrell.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Colleagues, there's no question that our city continues to experience a housing shortage that we've had for years and has led to an affordability and cost of living issues that we face today. Put simply, we haven't produced enough new housing at all income levels in order to keep up with our population growth and our city's housing demands. Since this issue has risen to the top of public concern, we have taken great strides together as a city and this Board of Supervisors to work to make San Francisco more affordable for everybody. We came together to pass an affordable housing trust fund that is adding billions of dollars in the coming years for more permanently affordable housing construction. We came together to pass additional investments in anti-eviction efforts and displacement efforts through our city's budget process and legislation approved here at the board. Our affordability issues deserve an all-hands-on-deck approach, and our constituents would expect nothing less. Addressing our affordability issues also warrants for out-of-the-box thinking, and all ideas to address the issue warrant a substantive discussion. Recently, it has been proposed that one way to lower housing prices and stop evictions and displacement is to place a moratorium on market rate housing in the Mission. While I very much understand the intentions behind these policies and this proposed policy, I do believe that we can't make public policy based on emotional reactions, and I believe it's critically important before moving forward on this legislation that we have a true impartial picture and analysis of what its effects and impacts will be. That's why today, along with Supervisor Wiener, I am submitting a letter to our controller asking that his office, through our city's chief economist, produce an economic report and analysis on the proposed moratorium on the Mission. Specifically, I am asking our chief economist to report and provide an analysis on what the effects would be for a 2-year and indefinite moratorium, the effect that it will have on housing and rental prices, not only in the Mission District but also citywide, the effect on the city's efforts to produce more new housing at all income levels, the effect the moratorium will have on eviction and buyout pressures for tenants and homeowners, a detailed breakdown on the amount of resources that the city would lose for affordable housing production, and other areas the office deems important for the public interest and good. I want to bring factual data and analysis into this policy discussion so that we can review and discuss the proposed policy objectively at the board, and expect the report to be completed for public review and consumption before we're set to discuss and vote on the policy.
I see.
I personally believe, although I appreciate the difference of opinions, that a moratorium is the wrong approach we should be taking as a city to address our housing shortage and crisis. We need to produce more housing at a fast rate at all income levels in order to make San Francisco more affordable for everyone. We haven't been producing enough for years, and it's been the single largest contributing factor to the affordability issues we're facing today. Admittedly, San Francisco is not going to become more affordable overnight. It's going to take years of dedication, investments, and community input that we have been working on to date, and I believe we still need to press forward on. I firmly believe that in conjunction with some downturn in our local economy, it's not going to become more affordable unless we continue to build more housing at all levels. And I look forward to the Controller's report and our further discussion at the board. The rest I submit.
Thank you, Supervisor Farrell. Supervisor Kim.
Thank you. Along that note about affordability in San Francisco, we also know that part of the affordability struggle here in the city is the vast increase of evictions that we are seeing occurring to many of our tenants, primarily seniors, those that are disabled, and of course our immigrant monolingual tenants. We all know the stories. Each of us knows constituents, but also probably friends that are currently facing evictions or have been evicted. The stats are well known. According to the Rent Board's most recent annual eviction report, there were 2,120 notices of evictions filed with the Rent Board for the year ending February 28, 2015. This, of course, doesn't include notices that were not filed by landlords. This is a 54.7% increase over 5 years. The actual numbers in eviction and displacement is likely much higher, as many evictions go unreported. The 5 leading causes of eviction in order of frequency is 1, breach of lease, 2, nuisance, 3, owner move-in eviction, 4, Ellis Act, and 5, illegal use. There's been tremendous focus both in the press, the mayor's office, and the Board of Supervisors about no-fault evictions such as Ellis Act and owner move-in evictions. The other leading causes of eviction, breach of lease, nuisance, and illegal uses, we're finding, however, is increasing, while Ellis and owner move-in evictions have been on the decline due to the increased publicity around this issue despite no change in state law. Our office is overwhelmed with requests for assistance by tenants who are getting displaced, and they are, as I mentioned, often seniors, immigrants, and disabled residents. We've each heard their stories. One story is Sylvia Smith, who spoke this morning. She is one of many tenants being targeted by the same landlord who is evicting tenants in 9 separate buildings in the Mission, the Castro, and North Beach. Sylvia is a disabled senior and a former U.S. postal worker that used to bring important notices, bills, birthday cards, and others. She stated that since the landlord bought the building 1 year ago, she's received notices of ridiculous accusations, ranging from being a drug dealer to others. She's now being evicted because her grandsons moved in with her in order to take care of her as she has trouble moving. Since this eviction notice, she has only become sicker from the stress. We also remember the story a month ago of tenants in a Chinatown SRO hotel on 2 Emory Lane who were served with a breach of lease notice for hanging laundry, a practice that they had engaged in for decades, but with a new landlord suddenly decided that this was a breach and served eviction notices on all the tenants. We also know of cases where tenants were placed in buildings where residential was not the legal use, but commercial was the legal use, and then were sent eviction notices often 20 years later because the landlord decided that they could make more money from office. Landlords and property management companies are using these types of evictions, considered quote-unquote low fault, to evict longtime tenants from their apartments. Other examples of harmless and curable nuisance evictions that we have heard of include carrying a bike through the hallway, painting your bedroom walls, placing a sticker outside your door, storing a stroller in the common area lobby, or even a noise incident that occurred 2 years ago. The surge in these types of frivolous evictions over the past 5 years coincide with the sharp rise in market rents and the opportunity to make more money by evicting the current tenant that's under rent control. Despite the decline in Ellis Act eviction notices last year, which I am grateful for, led by, I think, a lot of the community organizing and also the strong position of our mayor and the city regarding this issue, we are now seeing a steady increase of low-fault evictions of close to 82.5% in the last 5 years. Many of these residents, as I mentioned, are vulnerable and are not familiar with their rights. Housing counselors are overwhelmed by these cases, and even sadder, sometimes meet these residents after they were evicted, decided not to fight the eviction, and are now unable to find adequate housing in San Francisco's housing market. In fact, I met one of these seniors 2 weeks ago at the Navigation Center, which Supervisor David Campos and the mayor opened in the Mission. She was a senior Filipina woman, and I had asked how long she had been living on the streets, and she had mentioned she had been living on the streets of the Mission for 6 months. I asked how she became homeless, and she said it is because she was evicted from her home of decades after a new property owner had bought her building.
This legislation was brought to us by tenant and housing counselors who have seen the patterns in evictions in their caseload, along with hundreds of other tenants. And I, along with Supervisor Campos and Marr, are asking the city attorney to make amendments and updates to the rent ordinance. These amendments include 1, requiring that eviction notice be published in multiple languages and include information to tenants on where they can get help. This will require notices in English, Chinese, Vietnamese, Tagalog, and Russian. 2, stop low-fault evictions based on harmless mistakes. Landlords must provide proof of the alleged violation. 2 years ago, a senior Russian family came to my office because they got an eviction notice from their below-market rate unit. The property management insisted that their son, who had moved in, was using drugs. However, the property management company did not provide a police report as evidence, and therefore we were able to stop that eviction. 3, give tenants a chance to cure. Tenants must be given a reasonable amount of time to cure petty violations, whether it is removing laundry lines, a bike from the hallway, or repainting their bedroom wall. 4, clarify that housing that is not authorized for residential occupancy, such as dwelling units in commercial spaces or in-laws, should not be the sole reason of eviction, as we've seen in countless cases throughout the city. And finally, codify vacancy control, which is already allowable under state law, and actually put it into our local rent ordinance. This codifies state law that landlords or property owners who terminate a lease or require a tenant to temporarily relocate because of a repair-led remediation report or other types of eviction, that the tenant or the next tenant that moves in can move in at the rent of the departing tenant. Taken together, this package of amendments provide protections for tenants that are being forced out and reducing the ability of owners to raise rent in those cases. These important amendments will have a large impact on our most vulnerable tenants and reduce the incentive to bring forth cases clearly aimed at clearing units versus actual violations. Second, I'm also introducing a resolution of intent to renew and expand the Yerba Buena Community Benefit District. I want to say that this is a CBD that I consistently hear positive feedback about and has been actually a role model for how CBDs can bring together services and improvements that not only benefit a diversity of residents, small businesses, art nonprofits, and city museums, but also help to build community. It is one of the favorite I have to say it's one of my favorite CBDs that I've gotten a chance to work with. Of the 487 petition votes received, 81.7% were supportive, and this we imagine will be even higher when city parcels are included during the actual ballot phase. I want to recognize the leadership of Executive Director Kathy Maupin and our staff, including Andrew Robinson, as well as YBCBD Board Chair Lance Burwell. Finally, I want to take a moment and thank the coalition of advocates and families who have been working tirelessly on a 5-year plan to end family homelessness. A couple of weeks ago, we held a hearing at the Joint City and School District Select Committee where we heard testimony from parents struggling to get their children to school while working multiple jobs or searching endlessly and fruitlessly for a permanent home here in San Francisco. Stories included 8-year-old Lucho, who struggled to stay awake during his English class, even though it's his favorite subject at Sanchez Elementary School. He's been struggling in school since his father, a single parent, lost his job last year and became homeless. Lucho doesn't sleep well on the hard cot at the shelter and is stressed about where he might be sleeping next. We also heard from Alice, who wakes up at 5 a.m. to get ready for school so that she and her sister will have enough time to meet the rest of her family at the 24th Street BART station. Her family's size makes it difficult for them to find temporary shelter together, so they are often forced to split up. Between her mother's full-time job, constant housing search, and shelter moves, Alice rarely sees her mother more than 1 or 2 hours a day. We heard many of these stories at the hearing at the Board of Ed and Board of Supervisor hearing. And on Sunday, Commissioner Matt Haney and I authored an opinion piece on Mother's Day to encourage your support for homeless families struggling to survive in every district and those at risk of soon becoming homeless. Since Mother's Day, we've had 313 San Francisco residents sign a petition calling for the full implementation and funding of the 5-year plan to end family homelessness. The plan calls for the city to set aside 176 units in the housing pipeline for homeless families, increased funding for eviction defense, and targeted support for housing stabilization. This plan, which will cost $11 million over 5 years, a mere 0.1% of the city's growing $8 billion annual budget, is a small investment to make to end family homelessness for children like Lucio and Alice. We know with the recent private donation that's made by Google, both to Hamilton Family Center and the school district and Larkin Street, that we can actually make an impact on this very issue as we've been with this small investment over the past year. We'd like the city to continue this investment and continue our work to end this type of homelessness. And the rest I submit.
Thank you, Supervisor Kim. And to the remaining members, we are interrupting new business for a return to unfinished business. Madam President.
Yes, Madam Clerk, can you please call item number 3?
Item 3 is an ordinance to designate the R.L. Goldberg Building, 182 through 198 Goff Street, as a landmark under Planning Code Article 10 and making the required findings.
Colleagues, today I'm honored to sponsor the landmarking of the Rube Goldberg Building at 182 to 198 Goff Street in District 5. I know that Beverly Upton is in the audience, and she's been a champion on leading this landmarking. The combined residential and commercial building was designed in 1911 by architect Bernard J. Joseph for the Pulitzer Prize-winning cartoonist and artist Reuben Lucius Goldberg, whose name is actually engraved into the building. Rube Goldberg, best known for his crazy mousetrap contraptions, was a San Francisco original. Born here in 1883, he survived the 1906 earthquake and commissioned this building a few years later. He designed it with 2 apartments, one for him and one for his mother, along with an art studio brimming with drawing tables, paper, pencils, clay, and wire. And on the ground floor, he put retail spaces, only one store for whipped cream, which was his favorite dessert. Rube Goldberg achieved lasting fame as a cartoonist and inventor. To this day, his name is invoked to describe the comically complex, and in fact, Rube Goldberg is an adjective in Webster's dictionary. He didn't build the machines he drew, but his cartoons have become an inspiration for young engineers and designers around the world. And today, we are joined by such a group of young scientists. And of course, they're from Lowell High School, Supervisor Cohen and Supervisor Tang. The Lowell High School robotics team, the Cardinal Botanics team 4159, I hope I said all that right, it's a mouthful, has spent the last several weeks designing their very own Rube Goldberg mousetrap. They have come to City Hall today to demonstrate their machine and help us celebrate the landmarking of the Rube Goldberg building and the spirit of its namesake. The Lowell team, under the leadership of engineer and Lowell physics teacher Brian Cooley, has competed in several first robotics competitions regionally with their robots. These kids know that, well, these young people know their stuff. And I know Rube Goldberg, who himself was a graduate of Lowell class of 1900, would be proud. We are also joined today by Rube's granddaughter, Jennifer George, who's in the audience, the legacy director of Rube Goldberg, Inc., and the author of the quintessential book about her grandfather, The Art of Rube Goldberg. And here's the book. I'm happy to share with my colleague. It's a pretty heavy book. Thank you for being here today, Jennifer. Built in the after... Oh, yes. If you can stand, please. Thank you. Built in the aftermath of the 1906 earthquake, the Rube Goldberg building represents the vision and tenacity of an artist, a San Franciscan, who wanted future generations to know after the 1906 earthquake that our city perseveres. I'm excited to see the youngest generations display their artistry and tenacity in honor of Mr. Goldberg today. And colleagues, after the vote, I ask that we briefly recess the meeting to step outside the chamber and see what the Lowell High School team has put together. And with that, Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll? Oh, excuse me, Supervisor Christensen.
I just wanted to say Rube Goldberg is one of my favorites. I cannot verify it. Maybe Jennifer can, but I've been told he was actually employed as an engineer by the city of San Francisco and designed some of our sewer systems. Is that true? Yeah. I don't think there's any truth to the rumor, however, that he also designed the administrative structure of San Francisco city government. So.
Thank you, Supervisor Christensen. And with that, Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll?
On item 3, Supervisor Cohen. Cohen, aye. Supervisor Farrell. Farrell, aye. Supervisor Kim. Kim, aye. Supervisor Marr. Marr, aye. Supervisor Tang.
Aye. Go Lowell.
Tang. Tang, aye. Supervisor Wiener. Wiener, aye. Supervisor Yee. Yee, aye. Supervisor Avalos. Avalos, aye. Supervisor Breed.
Aye.
Breed, aye. Supervisor Campos.
Aye.
Campos, aye. Supervisor Christensen.
Aye.
Christensen, aye. There are 11 ayes.
This ordinance is finally passed unanimously. Okay, colleagues, we will take a 5-minute recess, and when we return, we will go immediately to our 3 p.m. special order. We're on recess. Colleagues, thank you so much for that recess, and congratulations again to Lowell High School for their amazing work. Madam Clerk, at this time, it is past 3 o'clock, and I'd like for you to call items number 12 and 13.
Items 12 and 13 comprise the Board of Supervisors sitting as a committee of the whole pursuant to a motion approved on May 5th for a public hearing to consider objections to a report of assessment costs submitted by the Director of Public Works for inspection and or abatement of blighted conditions ordered to be performed by the Director and the costs paid for out of a blight abatement fund pursuant to Chapter 80 of the Administrative Code. And item 13 is a resolution to approve the report of assessment costs.
Colleague, today's Committee of the Whole is being conducted to hear public testimony on a report of assessment costs submitted by the Department of Public Works for inspection or abatement of blighted conditions pursuant to Administrative Code Chapter 80, and to consider approving the underlying resolution. So at this time, without objection, we will open this hearing. First, we will hear from the Department of Public Works.
Good afternoon, President Breed and members of the board. My name is Gretchen Rude, here with Phil Galley, representing the Department of Public Works Graffiti Unit. Chapter 80 of the Administrative Code, the Community Preservation and Blight Reduction Act, requires that property owners maintain their property in a safe and blight-free condition. The code requires DPW to inspect graffiti and notify property owners to make corrections. It is the obligation of the property owner to maintain the property free of graffiti and blight. DPW notifies property owners by physical posting at the property, by regular mail, and certified mail once blight is posted. The notice of violation provides information on how to contact the graffiti unit, how to request a hearing, and how to request an extension if more time for abatement is needed. Accompanied by the mailed notices, we include date-stamped colored photos to indicate the extent and location of the graffiti. We also include a frequently asked question sheet with each notice mailed. For every notice of violation posted, the graffiti unit makes considerable effort to research property ownership and make courtesy calls or send courtesy emails with photos to property owners, property representatives, and or property tenants, alerting them of new graffiti vandalism on their property and the requirement to clean it up. DPW records show that the majority of property owners abate graffiti from their properties on time. In 2014, 96.6% of property owners abated the graffiti from their property once notified by SFDPW. If not abated within the allowed time, a fee is incurred. In cases where the property owner ignored the notice or refused to remove the graffiti, the city will perform the required corrections and assess the costs through the tax roll. Today we request the approval of the list for assessment of blighted properties. Since there's an outstanding balance on these properties, DPW is requesting that these assessments be added to the property tax bill through this board meeting. The outstanding fees owed are to recoup abatement and recovery costs incurred to the city's general fund. Thank you.
Thank you. And colleagues, are there any other questions? Any questions for the department? Seeing no names on the roster, let's open this up to public comment. Commenters will have up to 2 minutes. Can you please line up to my left, So are there any speakers here from the public who'd like to comment at this time?
You okay?
Yes.
I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to discuss this issue. Our property is one of the properties that's been recurrently blighted by graffiti of two types. One, spray can from the street level. It's graffiti which we've been able to clean up and diligently clean up. Another type of graffiti which is high up on the side of our building, which can only be accessed with ladders onto the property of the adjacent building. This graffiti we have not been able to fix ourselves. Thank you. When the city has painted over the graffiti artists repeatedly come back and paint it over again within the next 2 or 3 days. This has been going on for about 10 years. So we seem it's pointless for us to pay someone to paint over this graffiti, knowing that within 3 days or 4 days it'll be painted over once again. Furthermore, we don't have access to this wall since it's on someone else's property. And there's one needs ladders or some other device to get on top of this property. So we feel that we've been unable to address that particular aspect of our graffiti blighting.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Robert Dell, and I'm representing, what's your name?
Barney Jackson.
Mr. Barney Jackson. Barney Jackson. I was asked to assist him today, so I came from far away. But anyway, he had graffiti on his property. He painted it over a year ago. He cleaned it up and everything, all this within a month. It's been a year. He didn't come down and acknowledge to the city that he cleaned it up. He didn't know. He's 98 years old. He lives alone. He is sound. He's of sound mind and everything. He understands what's going on, but he just didn't come down. And now he's being assessed a fine or a tax lien on his property, and so he asked me to come down and help him. We caught the bus down here because I don't drive in San Francisco. It's too busy.
Okay. There will be an opportunity after the hearing to talk to a representative on this matter. Thank you. Any other members of the public who'd like to provide public comment at this time? Ma'am, did you want to speak?
I do. I want to speak. I just want to say, I hope you do help this fellow out. 98 years old. Isn't that something? You know? I mean, I'm glad this gentleman came down to help him out, and so that's what I want to say. I mean, you said what you said, so.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Is this comment only for this issue, or is general?
It's only for this issue.
That's what I thought.
Okay. So seeing no other members of the public, ma'am, did you want to comment? Okay, come forward, please.
My name is Mali Tang. I'm sorry, I don't speak English.
Okay, what language do you speak, ma'am?
I speak Cantonese.
Cantonese? Okay, can you give us just a minute and we'll have an interpreter brought over for you?
I'll try. I try to speak English. You know, I received a letter, registered letter a few days ago saying that I have some ticket I have not clear. And, you know, this building, this is the long building. This is the next door building. And I stay here. I use this one as a vacation. I'm sorry.
Upside down, right side up. No, there are no pictures. It's not a Xerox machine. It's an overhead projector. Right.
Madam President, we have paused the speaker's time.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
No, that's fine, ma'am.
And this is not the ticket is going to the long building. The people load down the stuff there is my next door. You see the color, and I'm stay in the building almost 24 hours, say about maybe 18 hours or 20 hours a day there.
Ma'am, did you want someone here to interpret? We have someone here who can interpret for you in Cantonese.
Ticket 呢係 唔係我嘅 ticket，係隔離嗰間屋嘅 ticket。你睇下個顏色同埋全部唔同，同埋我都係喺嗰度，不過我係 basement 嘅，住喺 basement 嘅。and then 我樓上咧，即係有時租俾嗰啲 guest 咧，人哋嚟呢度過夜嗰啲咧，所以我要好小心，即係周圍嘅。假如我有張 ticket 喺度，咁人哋有啲人客嚟到，咁我咪唔得掂，咪唔好睇。所以呢張 ticket 唔係㗎，你睇個顏色，呢個顏色同佢隔離間屋係同一樣個顏色，唔係我呢啲紅色，我間屋係紅色，呢度係咁樣色。
你停一停先，等我幫你講好冇？So look at this picture. I got a citation for graffiti, and apparently this is not my building because you can see my building is look as pink, and for the graffiti's building it looks different. So I don't think this citation should be paid by me. It should be my neighbors.
And I never saw this ticket before. That's only a few days then I received this letter. I never knew that before.
I have never received this kind of citation before. I just want to see anyone can help me to clarify this. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other speakers who'd like to provide public comment at this time? Seeing none, this hearing has been held and is filed. And now we will Supervisor Christensen, you have comments?
I just had a question for the department. Is that
okay,
possible?
So can we bring DPW back forward?
So through the chair, can you guys just clarify what the procedure is for these sort of cases where perhaps language or age or other things make it difficult for people to understand the city's intention and regulations?
Sure. We have frequently asked question sheets available in Spanish, English, and Cantonese. We also have translation available if people call. We do encourage property owners to call the office so that we can assist them. And so that's what we encourage in all the notices. It does provide our information for contact.
Okay, so you say that the FAQs in multiple languages are available. Where are they available?
Through our office.
Through your office. Mm-hmm. So someone who gets your English language notice has a phone number on it, and that person has to intuit that calling that phone number will connect them to someone who speaks their language, and they have to understand the mechanism of the city enough to wade through that process. So that seems like a hurdle. For a lot, I mean, since the goal here is compliance, not punishment, does it seem as though the department might have methods that might be adapted particularly to some of these challenging cases that would make it easier for people to comply?
You know, if they stipulate a hardship, we definitely...
Can you speak into the microphone, please, and identify yourself?
Phil Galley, Department of Public Works. If they stipulate a hardship in any which manner possible, we do have a tendency to work with them, whether it's by abatement, internally, working with them to find a contractor to do the abatement, any means possible to avoid these penalties, obviously.
So just words like stipulation and abatement say to me that this is kind of like our insider speak. So, for example, would it be possible for a one-page notice to accompany these warnings that has in several different languages, if you have problems or questions, call this number, for example?
Yeah, I believe that is stipulated on the notice of violation.
Okay, so the notice of violation has in 5 or 6 or 8 languages, if you don't understand or if you need help, please call this number.
No.
And how, compared to all the staff time that it's taking running back and forth dealing with non-compliant people. How much money would it cost to put a 1-cent page in with those notices that maybe helped these people get to someone who could clear this up?
Not very much. I think we sent out 1,500 notices last year.
So might that be something we could try?
Sure, definitely. 15,000 notices, excuse me.
Yeah. And what can be done for these folks who've taken the time to come down today and others like them? How
Supervisor Christensen, there will be an opportunity since we just held the hearing. And so I'll get to that point once you finish with your questioning for the department.
Finished, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Okay, so the board will now, thank you so much for being here. The board will now reconvene as the Board of Supervisors and colleagues. Before we consider the underlying resolution, we shall now take a quick break from this particular item to allow members of the public to confer with the department in the hallway about their concerns and to work on a resolution. So at this time, sir, and the members who have come here and who have concerns, if you can step outside the hall and you see the two members of DPW have been identified that were here speaking earlier, they will be able to assist you to resolve your issue. So thank you, and we'll return to this item at the later on in the meeting. So, Madam Clerk, let's return to roll call for introductions.
Thank you, Madam President. Supervisor Marr is next up to introduce new business.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Colleagues, I'm proud to join Supervisor Kim and Campos in the Just Cause 2.0 evictions protections for many people in our neighborhoods. I was proud to also be there with many of the tenant organizations, the San Francisco Anti-Displacement Coalition, and to hear the stories as Supervisor Kim laid out a few moments ago of seniors and disabled people, of immigrants and working families being evicted from their homes for harmless mistakes and gotcha type evictions. I'm also pleased that we'll be looking at vacancy control codification to really assist many people that are facing even increased speculation and flipping and evictions. I also wanted to say that the story told by the San Francisco Tenants Union activist Sylvia Smith, a senior and disabled woman, was extremely moving, but the spirit of many of the tenants and communities that are trying to protect the character of neighborhoods and the push out of working families and seniors and others from neighborhoods was really inspiring. So I'm looking forward as that measure goes forward. I also wanted to say that I'll be making my comments and asking to be re-referred after Supervisor Avalos talks about his Sustainable Communities Affordable Housing Bond, the $500 million housing bond, but I'll ask to be re-referred after that, after Supervisor Avalos speaks on that. I also wanted to acknowledge that I'm pleased to be co-sponsoring with the lead author, Supervisor Norman Yee, the Mental Health Awareness Month, but I did want to give a shout out to Angela Chan, formerly from the Police Commission, and many other police commissioners for really advancing a great Memphis-type model on how the police address more sensitively the mentally ill. And I think about 5 years ago, it was revealed that a large percentage of the officer-involved shootings by the police department involve people with mental illness. So Angela Chan and other police commissioners and others involved with mental health, but also law enforcement, got together, visited Memphis, looked at a model of a SWAT-type team that intervenes that in a psychiatric crisis to really help ensure that they deal with people with mental illness in an extremely sensitive way. So the crisis intervention team is celebrating its first anniversary right now, probably as we speak. And I am apologetic for not being able to be there, but we have our board meeting at this point. But thank you to Supervisor Yee for sponsoring the Mental Health Awareness Month to really help reduce stigma of people with mental illness and families that have, like mine, that have people that are mentally ill, so that we can really look at how to support them more with community mental health services, and to be a city that really cares about the mentally ill and to not stigmatize them. Also, colleagues, please join me on Saturday, May 16th from 11 to 6 p.m. for the 11th annual Asian Heritage Street Celebration. It's going to be right here at Civic Center Plaza. It's a new sponsorship now that the Asian Wake Foundation is no longer running it. And I wanted to give a shout out to the Oakland Asian Cultural Center Director, Tomiko Wong, for doing heroic work to keep the festival going. I was there in Japantown 11 years ago as many of us in the school district supported a lot of school-based efforts to bring different ethnic Asian communities together. It used to rotate around to different neighborhoods, and then it found its home in the Civic Center, Little Saigon area. But I look forward to the leadership of Tomiko Wong and the new organizations that sponsor and support it. But it's only one day this year. It's Saturday, May 16th from 11 to 6. If you want information about all the great activities going on, go to asianfairsf.com, asianfairsf.com. And lastly, I'll be putting on my bike helmet and pumping up my bike tires to ride to work, bike to work day on Thursday, May 14th. In the Richmond District, there's a pretty good, lively crew of us that'll be gathering at 7:45 at Kumaika Parklet on 3rd and Clement Street. So it's a coffee house called Kumaika 3rd and Clement. We'll be riding and joining up with many other crews of people riding to work. And we encourage you to join us in the Richmond District. It's really important, I think, that we get out of our cars and do more biking to school, biking to work. It's healthy and fun. It's good for the environment. And it's really affordable transportation as well. Bike to Work Day has many different rides organized through the city. For information about where to meet up with people, go to www.sfbike.org. That's sfbike.org. Thank you. The rest I'll submit.
Thank you, Supervisor Marr. Supervisor Wiener.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. After the discussion today of so many critical issues around housing and homelessness and so forth, I have a happier, more uplifting resolution to propose, specifically introducing a resolution to declare Cheer San Francisco to be the official cheerleading team of San Francisco and commending the organization on the occasion of its 35th anniversary. Founded in 1980, Cheer SF is the world's first LGBT cheerleading team. In its 35 years, Cheer SF has performed at 3 presidential inaugurations, all 8 gay games, and countless other local and national events, including San Francisco Pride, the Chinese New Year Parade, the Italian Heritage Day Parade, St. Patrick's Day Parade, Union Street Easter Parade, and Supervisor Farrell and I always get to hang out with them there. Veterans Day Parade, Cinco de Mayo Parade, the Pistahan Parade, and the World Series Championship Parade. They have appeared on numerous television shows, including America's Got Talent, and have performed all over the world, including at the Sydney Opera House and other international venues. Cheer SF is comprised of individuals who volunteer their time to represent the City and County of San Francisco and the LGBT community through exceptional displays of teamwork, athleticism, and dedication. In addition, in the last 15 years, Cheer SF has raised and donated over $300,000 to numerous nonprofit agencies supporting and strengthening communities through its unique philanthropic Cheer for Life campaign. I'm proud to introduce this resolution declaring Cheer SF to be the official cheerleading team of San Francisco, and I look forward to your support. And the rest I submit.
Thank you, Supervisor Wiener. Supervisor Yee.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. So, colleagues, as you can see today, I'm wearing a very bright lime green tie. While I am known to wear vibrant colors, today I am doing so for an important cause. It's Mental Health Awareness Month. In 2013, President Obama proclaimed the month of May as National Mental Health Awareness Month to draw attention to this important issue that afflicts millions of Americans. 1 in 5 Americans will experience a mental illness in their lifetime. And this statistics shocks me most is the suicide rate, which is that suicide is the 10th leading cause of death in the United States, and the third leading cause of death to young people, ages 10 to 24. While the numbers prove that this is a serious condition, there are still significant barriers to seeking treatment. We still have a strong stigma attached to the mental health treatment that makes it unsafe and inaccessible for those who need help when they are seeking it. While in San Francisco we are committed to equal access to mental health, in other parts of the country this is not the case. Mental health is less prioritized and thus given less resources. The negative view of mental health is even more prevalent in communities of color and often tabooed. That is why it is important to continue supporting culturally competent providers and increasing language access for our non-English speaking community members. This issue also affects our youth greatly, and I know that we will continue supporting our school wellness centers to provide more counseling and services for our students. Today, along with Supervisor Eric Marr, who has been championing this issue for many years, I am introducing a resolution to recognize May as the Mental Health Awareness Month in San Francisco. I also want to recognize that today, as Supervisor Marr had mentioned, the San Francisco Police Department and the Crisis Intervention Team work group is holding their first annual awards ceremony to recognize the works of officers, faculty, and volunteers who have dedicated time to training crisis intervention teams to provide crisis services to individuals with behavioral disorders. Since they have their ceremony today, many of them are unable to attend today. But we will be providing a special commendation on Tuesday, June 2nd, here at the Board of Supervisors. I hope that more programs like this will allow us to build a stronger culture in San Francisco where we support those with mental health issues rather than vilifying them or ostracizing them. I hope that with increased awareness that more people will be willing to seek help without fear or discrimination. The Mental Health Board of San Francisco and the San Francisco Health Network will be holding a resource table at the Behavioral Health Services Building at 1380 Howard Street lobby all month long. So colleagues, I hope you will support this effort. The rest I submit.
Thank you, Supervisor Yee. Supervisor Avalos.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Colleagues, first off, I want to thank those of you who approached me about the young boy who was in a Muni fatality today. A young boy going to school. He was on his way to Aptos Middle School. And I'm not sure what the whole story is, but he was hit by a Muni bus. And I'm not saying it's Muni's fault in any way whatsoever, but it was just very, very disturbing. I know we work very hard to make Vision Zero reality in San Francisco, and this was something that really hit really hard, close to home. This young boy who was killed, and I think it's important that we acknowledge these deaths when they happen. So I just wanted to recognize that this happened today, and it's been really on my mind, disturbing me, bothering me all day that this could happen to such a, one of our youngest, residents here in the neighborhoods that are really unsafe in our streets. So just thought I'd bring that up. I also have an in memoriam for a longtime Excelsior District resident, Stanley Francis Cords. He was a retired deputy chief with the San Francisco Police Department. He died while gently meandering on San Bruno Mountain on April 21st. A lifetime resident of San Francisco, he was preceded in death by his beloved wife of 61 years, Anne. Stan was an Excelsior native and graduate of Guadalupe Elementary School, Denman Middle School, Balboa High School. You can't get any more Excelsior than that. He then went on to City College of San Francisco and San Francisco State. Stan was inducted into the United States Army in 1951, transferred to the Army Reserve in 1953, and honorably discharged in 1956. Stan worked for the United States Postal Service for several years before entering the San Francisco Police Department in 1953. He was promoted through the ranks of the police department, sergeant, lieutenant, captain, and retired as deputy chief in 1984. Upon retirement, Stan became a docent volunteer on Alcatraz Island and could be found there every Monday for the last 28 years, leading behind-the-scenes tours to anyone lucky enough to follow him up the hill to the cell block. He was a lifelong member of the Church of the Epiphany, and over the years served as a CCD teacher, mass lecturer, and Eucharistic minister. Stan was also a member of the Outer Mission Merchants and Residents Association, Balboa Geezers Club, retired San Francisco police officers, and many others. Stan was an avid day hiker, which morphed into a day walker as he got older. He could be seen throughout the city, the neighborhood, or on the trails of San Bruno Mountain. He believed life is best spent as a gentle meanderer. Stan was a great guy and will be dearly missed by his family and friends. And for someone who has spent his life walking, there could be really no better way to go than to be in the activity you love the most. So Stan will be greatly missed in the neighborhood. I also have a couple other measures I'd like to introduce. One, people may have heard of the Bernal Heights resident who was renting a house in Bernal and had her rent increased by a dramatic amount. I think it was an 800% increase to her rent. The landlord, the property owner, was able to increase the rent because before that, the building was under rent control. But once the landlord had removed a rental in-law unit that had been in the building, then the landlord had the ability to actually remove that building from rent control and raise rent. It was a single-family home with an in-law unit that was removed. So we've actually seen through the planning department there are about 2 to 3 in-law removals each week that come to planning. And it seems to be a method that property owners are using to be able to have a building that's a single-family home building with a rental, with an in-law unit to be removed from the rental rent control pool. So we're actually moving forward with an ordinance that would require any removal of an in-law unit to require a conditional use. We could actually craft this to be something that might be in place temporarily, at least while we're seeing such high levels of evictions. But we want to make sure that we're preserving the ability of people who are in San Francisco who have been in their houses for years to maintain rent control so they can maintain a level of affordability. So that we'll be introducing. Also, there may have been some news about a housing bond that I've been working on. I want to thank my colleagues Eric Marr and Supervisor Campos for signing on as co-sponsors to what I am calling the Sustainable Communities Affordable Housing Bond. We all know that our economy in San Francisco is booming. It's booming like it's never boomed before, but it's not booming in a sustainable way. We're seeing unemployment rates that remain high in certain parts of our communities of color. African Americans, Latinos are not doing as well in San Francisco. And we're also seeing, as we're building new housing, that evictions, displacement is going on in a dramatic way that like it's never done before. And so we need real dramatic and aggressive action on our affordable housing crisis. I want to thank Mayor Lee for his introduction of a $250 million housing bond. I really appreciate it. It's the right thing to do, but I think we actually haven't had a real dialogue in this city about what the true size of this bond should be, and also whether there could be an additional commitment that we make with our wealth and with our property taxes to be able to fund a larger bond. There are actually real benefits that come when we build and we actually create new neighborhoods and we actually make public housing much safer and stronger. That actually has untold benefits on all of San Francisco. But there's also things that happen in our communities that with different levels of development that happen across our different communities of San Francisco that really need addressing. I'm not sure that's been addressed in the mayor's 2 $250 million housing bond, and I hope that we can engage in some dialogue as well as to what shape our bond could take. I agree with the mayor on looking at a down payment assistance loan program, about having a program for teachers and other service providers in San Francisco. I believe that we really need to look at construction and rehabilitation of affordable housing, building housing from scratch, that public housing needs to be restored, that we look at requiring housing that's already that's rented, but requiring it so it can remain affordable. But we don't have any language in the mayor's office, in the mayor's proposal about housing co-ops and housing trusts, and how housing trusts can be play a role in helping making housing affordable in San Francisco. And I don't think we've truly addressed the needs that exist all around San Francisco when we see such disproportional development going on. If you look down around Market Street, there's high-rise buildings that are going up. You look at different parts of our different neighborhoods, and on the eastern side, you see housing that's being developed. But in District 11, and I would say in parts of the Sunset District, and even parts of the Richmond District, we have not seen a large development of housing that's going up. We haven't seen the transformative effect that development can have on our commercial corridors to promote transit and to promote greater economic diversity and greater economic activity. Those are the things that we can actually apply by using our bond dollars effectively and thinking about how we can build our corridors for the 21st century. Colleagues, if you have been to District 11, I know a lot of you have. You look on Mission Street, our corridor hasn't really developed much in the past 70 years. We have housing that's 2 stories, sometimes 1 story on a transit corridor that's one of the busiest corridors in the whole neighborhood, well below what are permitted heights. And we actually need some public and private collusion of dollars to actually help stabilize and revitalize these parts of San Francisco, and it's not just District 11. So I'd like to be able to think that we could engage in a real strong effort, consider even the larger size of the bond with the wealth that we're generating in San Francisco, the wealth that we're all benefiting from, to actually make sure that we can rebuild this city for the 21st century. And colleagues, we're already partway through the 21st century, so we're well behind the ball in making our city work for everyone. So colleagues, I want to thank Supervisor Marr and Supervisor Campos for signing on to this $500 million housing bond. My goals really are to be able to go to the ballot with one measure that is larger in size than what the mayor is proposing, but perhaps larger than what this measure is, but one that's looking at sustainable growth, sustainable housing development, sustainable affordable housing development for this century. Thank you, colleagues.
Thank you, Supervisor Avalos. Supervisor Marr.
Yeah, I wanted to echo Supervisor Avalos's points about the Sustainable Communities Affordable Housing Bond. I wanted to thank the mayor and Jeff Buckley, his senior housing advisor, especially for the working groups that my office has been participating in. I especially wanted to thank the mayor for his working group number 2, which is the low-income housing priorities, which focuses on the most vulnerable residents of San Francisco, like families, seniors, and veterans, and prioritizing investments in neighborhoods where growth and development put low-income residents at risk. Within the Association of Bay Area Governments and the MTC, with some grant funding from the Housing and Urban Development of the federal government, there's a good tool used by UC Berkeley researchers, Miriam Zook and others, that is able to help us identify which communities might be next at risk, from the Mission's takeover of City Hall from Friday, highlighting the crisis and state of emergency for the Mission, to many other neighborhoods where there's transit corridors and the threat of low-income working families and seniors to be evicted in the coming years. I think it's critical that we look at tools like UC Berkeley is developing. I wanted to also say that the mayor's $250 million bond is a good first step, but it's nowhere near enough of the critical funding needed by our housing crisis. Even our housing element of our San Francisco general plan suggests that 60% of the housing should be affordable, or our RENA goals of the Association of Bay Area Governments, our regional housing needs assessment, say that it should be at 60%, and the Housing Balance Initiative saying that it should be 33% and above. The city's existing sources, such as the Housing Trust Fund, which we passed few years ago, inclusionary fees and the redevelopment tax increments, San Francisco might be able to build close to 500 new net affordable homes per year over the next 5 years and continue to rehab its public housing, but it's significantly short of the level needed to address the acute imbalance of new housing production. And the current pipeline of approved development, it's at 16% affordable low and moderate income housing compared to the 84% market rate and luxury housing that the city is currently building. And I think the imbalance was really highlighted on Friday when many community coalitions from the Mission and allies took over this building to raise awareness, not only in the mayor's office with a sit-in, but also through the halls of City Hall. So I thank the Anti-Displacement Coalition and the many organizations for really bringing that voice and that crisis to City Hall. I also think that the city's imbalance of housing right now is especially acute, and it's growing, and the neighborhoods are experiencing the greatest brunt of development pressures, especially the Mission, but also along Market Street and other transit corridors. And I think equally critical to address is this displacement crisis that's, I think, undermined the diversity and the nature of our working families' neighborhoods in our city. For example, in 2014 alone, we saw 2,000 evictions and over 400 housing units permanently removed from rent control through Ellis Act evictions and condo conversions. And it doesn't even count the number of short-term rental units that have been placed on the market, pushing out more of our affordable housing stock in the city as well. I think the city just committed $700 million as an increase to transportation funding over the next 5 years by combining a $500 million bond and a $30 million per year set aside and an expanded transit impact fee. We also need to secure much more for affordable housing. That's why the Avalos Sustainable Communities Affordable Housing Bond is really critical. My hope, too, is that we have one measure moving forward and that there's a lively dialogue in the next few weeks as we put it on the ballot. I think the new funding for $500 million dedicated to affordable housing would be critical for the next 5 years to deal with the crisis raised by the takeover of City Hall on Friday. The new funding would serve needs for family housing, senior housing, homeless and supportive service housing, public housing, and special needs housing, as well as first-time home ownership for teachers and first responders and others. I like how Supervisor Avalos identified the San Francisco Community Land Trust small sites acquisition and other ways to really ensure that we have new sites to have affordable housing before they are also flipped and changed and taken off the market as well. So with $500 million, from my calculation, the city would have $100 million to establish a neighborhood stabilization trust large enough to fund acquisition of 600 or more units of at risk of displacement over the next 5 years, $200 million to build up to 1,000 additional affordable units to keep pace with the runaway scale of market rate and luxury developments in the neighborhoods most impacted by gentrification and displacement, $100 million to land bank up to 15 new sites before they become flipped and lost opportunities, $80 million to fill the gap in the Hope SF public housing rebuild. I hope Westside Courts is also considered in addition to Potrero and Sunnydale, for example, and $20 million to expand the down payment assistance program for teachers and other first-time home buyers. So I'm really appreciative of Supervisor Avalos and Supervisor Campos' support as well, and hope that as we move forward with one affordable housing bond, that it's a sustainable community affordable housing bond and really at the levels that we need during this crisis that we're facing as a city. Thank you. The rest I'll submit.
Thank you, Supervisor Marr. President Breed.
Thank you. Colleagues, today I'm proud to introduce the $250 million affordable housing bond along with the mayor and my colleagues, Supervisor Cohen, Christensen, Farrell, Supervisor Tang, and Supervisor Wiener. Creating affordable housing and rehabilitating existing affordable housing that we already have has been one of my highest priorities since I've been on this board, and I'm grateful that we are partnering in this effort. Together, over the past a little bit over a year, we've dedicated $2 million to refurbish unused public housing in order to move in homeless families. We've invested $5.4 million for badly needed elevator repair in our 9 public housing developments, and we've launched the RAD program to rehabilitate over 4,600 public housing units. And over the next 25 years, we have about 250,000 new people wanting to live here, in addition to the 800,000 who already live here and many who are struggling to live here. San Francisco has the highest or the second highest rent in the country, depending on which report you read, and it's the least affordable place to buy a home. And between 2010 and 2011, we added about one new housing unit for every 10 residents. We need to build about 18,000 new affordable units in the next 7 years, yet in the last 7 years, we only built 1/3 of that number. I know how hard it is to find an affordable place to live in San Francisco these days, and I know how scary it can be not to know if you'll be able to stay in the home you currently reside in. I've dealt with it sadly myself, and I know that we need to build more affordable housing, and that's why we're launching this bond today, which will build more housing and provide more opportunities for people of many income levels. I know some will argue that the bond, already $250 million, is not big enough. I understand that. I get it. And I just want to reiterate a couple of points here. This is not the only monies that we'll have to deal with affordable housing. In the next 6 years, we will spend over $1 billion to build affordable and middle-income housing. Not to mention the fact that we have to think about the capacity and our ability to actually effectively build faster. And when we talk about over $1 billion, and we talk about in the next 6 years of rehabilitating and building new, it is going to take some time. So increasing this bond to $500 million, although I understand the logic for it, I just want to be clear to the public that this is not our only means of building affordable housing in our city. We have access to thanks to the voters' Affordable Housing Trust Fund, access to OCII funds, which are sadly decreasing over the years, developer fees, and federal and state funding. And we're hoping that this bond can help us to move a lot faster in developing these projects and providing additional support for the programs. And also to keep in mind that the last two housing bonds that the city tried to pass with a 2/3 votes failed. And I want to see one ballot measure go to the ballot as well, and I want it to be successful, and I don't want to see it raise taxes, and I don't want to change the city's bonding capacity in any way. A larger bond would require either raising taxes or diverting funds from our other planned bonds for parks, public health, earthquake safety, and muni. The first option, raising taxes, would put us in a very real situation of having this bond fail at the ballot, leaving us with nothing for affordable housing instead of the $250 million. And second, would only sacrifice one desperately needed investment for the sake of another. This bond is the right cause, the right size, at the right time. We need this housing. We need it for those struggling to pay their rent. We need to be responsible in managing the city's money and its bonding capacity. We need this for public housing. We need this for rehabilitation of existing affordable housing. And we need it for those who don't have housing at all. So I'm really hopeful that we can come to some sort of agreement and move this bond forward, move one bond forward on the ballot moving forward. Thank you, colleagues, and the rest I submit.
Thank you, Madam President. Supervisor Campos.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. And again, my thoughts go to Supervisor Avalos and to the community in District 11 and the family of this kid who died tragically today in another accident. I have a couple of points, and let me begin by talking about the housing bond. And I appreciate all the comments that have been made, and do want to thank Mayor Lee, President Breed, and others for putting this item forward. But I will respectfully disagree with the comment that this is the right size of a bond. Let's be very honest and frank about what's happening in San Francisco. If you take the mayor's projections of what he wants to do at face value, if we're going to build 30,000 units of housing, and 15,000 of those units are going to be affordable. Just to build that, we're talking about $3.7 billion. So $1 billion over the next 6 years is only a fraction of what the mayor himself has said is needed. And when you look at $250 million, it's a drop in the bucket. The notion that we can tell the public that we are addressing the housing crisis with a $250 million bond, to me, I don't believe that is the truth. That is the reality. We are dealing with a crisis and presenting what is, I think, at the very best, a Band-Aid. There is a saying in Spanish, that what the mayor is trying to do here is tratar de tapar el sol con un dedo. You're trying to cover the sun with one finger, and it's just not going to work. Quite frankly, even the $500 million that Supervisor Avalos is talking about is a fraction of what is needed. We are telling some of us, at least two of my colleagues have already come out against what my community in the Mission has called for, which is a moratorium on luxury housing, because they want more building of affordable housing. And yet in the Mission, we need to build to maintain the level of diversity, the level of displacement, not for things to get better, but just to maintain where we are today. We need to build 2,400 units of affordable housing. To do that in the Mission, you need to come up with $600 million in the Mission alone. And our mayor is talking about $250 million, something that doesn't even cover half of what one neighborhood needs as a response to a crisis. Respectfully, I disagree. Now, let's talk about this moratorium. And as colleagues know, this luxury moratorium was introduced last week, and I look forward to a conversation and discussion. What I am doing today is that I am formally introducing a motion that will allow this Board of Supervisors to hear the matter as a committee of the whole. As I've noted before, in my 6.5 years as a supervisor, I have never made a request to have a matter held or be heard through a committee of the whole. But I think the gravity of what's happening is such that that is needed. And it's not something that I am saying alone. It's actually something that more than 1,000 people that came to City Hall on Friday came to my office and asked that I formally make that request. So today I am introducing that motion to ask that the Board of Supervisors hear the luxury moratorium that we have to introduce as a committee of the whole. Now, let me say that I appreciate the fact that two of my colleagues have taken a keen interest in the luxury moratorium, and I certainly respect the fact that we have different perspectives on this. But let me make a couple of things clear. Yes, it is true that we have an emotional reaction to what's happening in the Mission. But emotional reaction doesn't mean that we haven't thought about the proposal that we have put forward. It is not simply emotion that's driving the policy proposal that I hope is given due consideration by this body. It is actually based on policy rationale as to why the existing policy that focuses on the building of luxury housing has not worked for this neighborhood. It is based on factual data that includes a recognition of the fact that 10,000 people have been displaced from this neighborhood, many of them Latino, many of them working class. It also is based on the fact that even if you believe in the market, that there is limited land in the Mission, and that unless we do something different, by the time the city is in a position, as Supervisor Breed said, it takes time for the city to do anything when it comes to housing, that by the time you get to the position where you can actually acquire the limited amount of land that's available, unless we do a pause on luxury development, that housing will be gone, and there will be no land on which to build affordable housing. Now, I welcome the request that has been made to have the chief economist for the city do a report on the luxury moratorium. But I will note a couple of things. I hope that as we move forward with this request, that the mission is not held to a higher standard. I have, since I've been on this board, seen supervisors request things that are specific to their district, including interim controls for their district, without an economic impact report. I hope that when it comes to the mission, additional requirements are not made of that neighborhood. The second point is, if it is the case that this report is so critical to understanding the merits of this proposal, it is interesting that people who are putting so much value on a report have no problem coming forward and coming out against the proposal before any findings in the report are actually completed or began. And then the final point is this, that before we introduced our proposal, we did check in with the chief economist, who noted that the initial phase of what we have requested, which is, as a matter of law, a 45-day pause, in his expert opinion, does not require an economic impact analysis. The requested period of time for which action has been sought is simply not long enough to have any material impact on the economy. So to the extent that I agree that there has to be a report that looks at the long-term implications of such a luxury housing moratorium, I would hope that the very people who have called for that report would follow the advice and guidance of our economist, who has indicated that no such report is needed for the first phase of the proposal. And so I hope that we move forward voting on that first phase, on the merits, up or down, without waiting to delay the action on a report that the economist himself has indicated is not necessary. The rest I submit.
Thank you, Supervisor Campos. Supervisor Christensen.
I just want to add my enthusiasm for the proposed housing bond, touching on the high points, most of which have been covered. I think the fact that this is the largest housing bond to date that the city has considered is important. I have many constituents who are more likely to support it because their property taxes will not be raised. I do think it's important that it's part of a bigger funding package, and particularly because the bond will allow us to leverage state and federal funding through matching financing. I believe we can manage this bond, and through that management build not only housing but confidence in the city's ability to begin taking steps toward finding solution for the housing crisis, and in doing so that we can create support for future housing bonds as we've done for other departments and projects in the city. Most importantly, the information that I have indicates that there's a great deal of support for this particular bond and this particular amount, and I think that's most critical since what we all want is a bond that we can pass in November. I know that my colleagues, Supervisor Cohen, Supervisor Kim, have absorbed a lot of the housing increases in the city, and I'm grateful for that. I'm pleased to see Supervisor Avalos welcome some of that development in his district. I understand even Supervisor Campos has been touring South Van Ness looking for opportunities there. And I think as I look at my district, the most built out of any in this city and the most dense, that even we are trying to find opportunities for new housing where we can do our part in taking care of the people who live in our city and who need affordable housing. The rest I submit.
Thank you, Supervisor Christensen. And seeing no other names on the roster, Madam President, that concludes the introduction of new business.
Thank you. So, Madam Clerk, is DPW returned?
No, Madam President, we have yet to hear from DPW that they're ready.
Okay, let's move on to public comment.
At this time, the public may comment generally for up to 2 minutes on items within the subject matter jurisdiction of the board, including the policy discussion between the Honorable Mayor and Supervisor Tang, and the minutes and items on the adoption without reference to committee calendar, items 17 through 19. Please note, public comment is not allowed on items already subject to public comment at a board committee. Pursuant to Board Rule 4.22, direct your remarks to the board as a whole and not to individual supervisors nor to the audience. Speakers using translation will be allowed twice the amount of time to testify, and if you would like a document to be displayed on the overhead projector, please clearly state such to SFG TV and then remove the document from the screen when you would like it to return to live coverage of the meeting.
Thank you. First speaker, please.
My name is Francisco da Costa, and I'm requesting the Board of Supervisors that we have public comment in the earlier portion of your deliberations. It's really cumbersome for somebody to sit down for hours and hours and hours just to give 2 measly minutes of public comment. Also, you know, somebody like me, when I stand up, I was approached by the sheriff, you know, and it's a pity that I had to explain to him what my situation is. But I'm requesting you, if you all want us to come here, let us say what we want to say and leave. And then y'all can spew your diatribe as y'all are used to. Now, I know y'all want to have a hearing on this and a hearing on that. I think we should have a hearing on the Board of Supervisors. As far as I know, there are 2 Board of Supervisors who have got their elections illegally. We've got some supervisors here who are anointed. We need to get a hearing on that. And we need to find out really about some supervisors who are backing the developers and find out how can some supervisors get a salary from outside what you all are getting here and still be here, and other supervisors who make deals with developers who's reported to me. We have some empirical data, and we don't want to put it on our blogs, that they make deals with developers for condominiums and so on and so forth. So I'm requesting you, Board of Supervisors, you know, I really don't need to come over here. You know, some of y'all get my blogs. Y'all may not like what I have to say, but I'll tell you, it's disgusting. If you have a video of the supervisors who were here 5-6 years ago and take a video of what is being deliberated here, you can see for yourself. There is no substance. And I give you 5 seconds of my time. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
I am 2 years on the street, 85 years old, Holocaust survivor and World War II survivor. You are talking about houses, you are talking about a lot, but only one aircraft, it's about from 20 to 50 billion dollars. Can you understand how many houses will you have? Okay? But this is because we are a fascist country. In Obama fascist, in Mayor Lee, in even Board of Supervisors, fascist, Gestapo. I wanted to tell you, I lived in different Soviet Union, it's terrible, but we never, no one country in the world evict people. You have problem in the country about eviction. It became like law for United States, eviction. Everybody when wanted something to do against somebody, he is mentally ill, he is drunk, he is drunkard, he is using drug. This is the problem. In police, of course, you know very well that American police is fascist police. They kill people on the street, but not only this. Police came to my home 12 o'clock at night, naked. 6 police took me out and fabricate everything what we want. I am on, this is Bible, and this is Torah. I ask God to punish you because you don't do what you should to do, what you people vote for you, and you have to do something to help people. Okay? God bless you.
Thank you, sir. Next speaker, please.
President Breed and other victims of the cabal, my name is Christopher Dahl, and I live at 6th and Howard, currently 14 meters and 10 blocks from sea level. I rise to expand on the subject of governance in the 21st century. The world has changed, members, changed in so many, many ways, and the structures and goals of government must change with it. The overall objective of governance must continue to be to maximize the capacity of its constituents to adapt to change. This has not changed, but the tools used have and will continue to change. The first step is to maximize the observation of conditions. A tap on the screen here will capture a picture, and another tap commits the picture as a fact of city life, time-stamped and geolocated. If our beloved city and county had the intellectual wherewithal to manage Instagram hashtags on an ongoing basis, we wouldn't have appeals of CEQA determinations because the facts would be visible and incontestable. The second step is to maximize the observation of implementation. One tap on the screen would share the fact that 8th Street between Market and Mission is moving towards 7th Street and away from the Holiday Inn, currently on 8th Street, at about the rate of 1/10 of a millimeter per day. And yet another tap will note that any remediation hasn't slowed things down. The final step is communication. And not yours, members, but the communications of your constituents, specifically the ones about you. Are you trending? I kind of doubt it, and I'm sure you wish you actually got that level of attention. But for now, smile. You're on YouTube. Thank you, President Breed.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon, President Breed and supervisors. I have graphics. Graphics, please. Oh, there it is. She's got a musical out. It says for Walter there. Carole King. Somebody said it looked like Fatal Attraction. Well, that's sort of right. She did this song, and I changed the words. And it's about the mission. I feel the mission earth move under my feet. I feel the large building sky tumbling down. What are you going to do about affordable housing in the mission all around? Ooh, city, when I see your land face, it's like the carnival month of May. And city, we need affordable housing, and those buildings, big buildings, are coming our way. Hey, I feel the earth tumbling, big building down. And also, she also wrote, well, I'll ask you now, city, and I won't ask again. Will you still love us tomorrow? Is this a lasting building mission treasure or just a budget item measure? So I'll ask you now and I won't ask again. Will you still love the mission housing tomorrow? Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon, supervisors. Good afternoon, President Breed. Beverly Upton. I'm usually here as the Executive Director of the San Francisco Domestic Violence Consortium. Today I'm here as a resident. I really want to thank you all for your unanimous vote to save the Rube
I'm
Goldberg
sorry, Ms.
building.
Upton, but since we passed this item, we can't talk about it in public comment.
Thank
so
you.
if you can talk about it generally.
Absolutely. I also wanted to thank you for everything that you've done today and in the past to try to preserve housing in San Francisco and to keep San Francisco affordable for all. I think it's what Rube Goldberg would have wanted. Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here. Next speaker, please.
Yes, hello, I'm Jackie Naylor. I too want to thank you all for what you're doing for housing here in San Francisco. As most of you know, Beverly and her husband and myself and my husband continue to struggle with the Ellis Act eviction that we're facing in the Rube Goldberg building. So despite the efforts that were made here today, of course, we still are facing that. And I wanted to invite you all tomorrow. We're actually having an open house at our flat, 194 Gough Street, which is the most historic flat in the building. It's got old wallpaper and everything imaginable from Rube's day. And we're having that from noon to 2 tomorrow at 194 Gough Street. And of course, we'll also be raising awareness for our eviction and doing interviews, etc. So I just want to thank you so much again for all your efforts. It's so needed, and we really have a lot of faith in all the efforts you're making. Thank you so very much.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Distinguished members of the board, thanks for hearing me today. I came today to talk about illegal office conversions in the Mission. When I became involved last week in Ernest's new office planning, offering to help design indoor bicycle parking, it came to my attention that our office had no permits. I discussed this with Building Commissioner Walker, who further expressed that because it's first story, and this is at 351 Alabama, though they're referring to it as 350 Florida, they'll be converting a loading dock into the entrance to the building. And I plan to bring this up at the Planning Commission. We sent a building inspector over there yesterday who, surprised, after I was terminated for raising these concerns, did not find any construction underway, but still on the radar there. But because I will also be a little bit busy looking for work, I wanted to take the opportunity today to raise this. And again, thanks for hearing me out.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Diana Martinez, and I'm with the Mission SRO Collaborative. I am here representing a lot of tenants who live in SROs in the Mission, and I wanted to say that we really support what Supervisor Campos said earlier, particularly about the bond and about how we need much more resources than what has been suggested. Earlier this year, the Housing Authority opened up a list for some affordable housing in the city of San Francisco, and 10,000 people applied for that affordable housing. It really says something about what an emergency we're in. And so we are here to address this housing emergency. SRO tenants are seeing increased harassment, no-fault evictions, and more buildings are coming into the Mission, more and more luxury housing buildings that SRO tenants cannot afford. For the majority of the population who lives in the Mission, they cannot afford it. So that is why we are here to be in support of the moratorium that was proposed last week, and also to support the comments that were said by Supervisor Campos earlier. This city is in great need, and we really hope that the supervisors here can find it in their hearts to support the residents of this city. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Chiag Bhakta. I am also with the Mission SRO Collaborative, born and raised in San Francisco, in the Tenderloin specifically. Yes, there are a few of us left. And if you don't enact any strong legislation, such as a moratorium or such as a lot more money for affordable housing, you'll see people like me in a museum in the future, because we won't be left in this city. And I mean that partially satirically, partially with great despair, because I see more and more of my friends and family not being able to live in this city. And I see more and more SRO residents in this city, as someone who grew up in an SRO myself and who now works and advocates for SRO residents not being able to live in this city because of the lack of strong legislation that is not been coming out from this board. Apologize we weren't able to be here last week. We were out of town for a training when the moratorium legislation was introduced. But be sure that we will be organizing around this issue from now on, not only our organization, but many organizations from around the entire city. As many of you may know, there was a citywide poll done earlier this year, and it was 65% of voters polled did support a halt on new project approvals in the Michigan District for a year. So there is broad support in every single one of your districts, including Supervisor Wiener and Supervisor Farrell's district, who have already come out against this proposal without their economic report coming out. And I just hope y'all actually do something good for the city, and actually, instead of just the rhetoric of supporting affordable housing and supporting the residents, actually, actually enact legislation that's going to help them. And before I go, although Lowell High School got a shout out today, I wouldn't be able to leave here without giving a shout out to the best high school in the city. And I'm pretty sure President Breed would agree, Galileo Lions, go G House.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon, Supervisors. I'm Peter Warfield, Executive Director of Library Users Association. I'd like to call your attention and the public's attention to getting less for more expenditure. And I'd like to urge you to have hearings as well as to ask questions when the mayor's budget comes to you June 1st with respect to the library. Regarding reduced service, the first thing the library has done within about the last year is to put entry restrictions on the public that are so bad that the American Civil Liberties Union of Northern California sent the library a letter saying that some of those rules and the punishments, the exclusions from attendance, were basically unacceptable, including one specifically referring to inappropriate use of the bathrooms, which ultimately ended up in the library's rules anyway. Anonymous searching for patrons has been all but eliminated from our library last year. There were 60 terminals spread throughout the 28 locations. Now there are 2 in one location. Every other terminal requires a library card to use. BiblioCommons has been installed for the public. They allow themselves, and the library apparently thinks it's okay, they can kick out any user for any reason altogether from using their service. They can censor what people say. They can break patron privacy. They can investigate our patrons, and they are outsourcing suggestions. I challenge anybody to do a subject or other
thank you very
search
much.
and compare.
Next speaker, please.
Hello, my name is Vic Ferrer. I own the Producers Loft Video Soundstage and Photography Studio, which is located next door to 2779 Folsom Street. That building was given a citation number 1620166, which you're reviewing today. That building has, in the past 10 years that I've been next door to it, has never been maintained.
Is this, excuse me, sir, I'm sorry to interrupt you. We will stop your time. Did you have a chance to talk to DPW, or were you late to the 3 o'clock hearing?
No, I was here.
Okay. Did you have a chance to talk to a DPW representative? So we're a general public comment, and so at this time, if you don't mind, it's because we had public comment for this matter, I will ask the DPW representative to talk to you outside of the chamber.
Out here?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Yes, my name is Dana Rose. I work in disease prevention. I was deprived of sleep again last night from 2:30 to 5:30 a.m. My back was quote-unquote irritated so that I was prevented from falling back to sleep. On October 28th last year, I attended this meeting for the first time. My back had been virtually immobilized. Some high-tech means had been used at night to tighten up the muscles in my back so badly that I could barely walk. I had to stretch for 2 or 3 hours in the morning to regain some ability to walk. The same technology was used last night in a lesser form to deprive me of sleep. They, quote unquote, irritated my back just enough so that I was prevented from falling back to sleep. Perhaps there are certain parties that don't want me to attend this meeting, don't want me to continue going to Marin County and telling them they had almost the highest rates of breast cancer in the world, that synthetic estrogen is playing a significant role in half the cases, that the drug companies had been emphatically and repeatedly told for 60 years by leading scientists and organizations that this drug was causing cancer, heart attacks, strokes, birth defects, and should not be put on the market. And a new study in 2010 revealed that the breast cancer women developed from taking synthetic estrogen was very aggressive, with a 96% greater likelihood of dying from the disease. I'm getting threats against myself and my family. I continue to be deprived of sleep, and hundreds of times fumes have been put in the room that make me feel.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Next speaker, please.
I had hoped Archbishop Cordelleone would show up, but he didn't. You know, I thought it was God's will, but it wasn't, because if it was, it would have happened. And his will is sometimes very mysterious. Now, today I'd like to talk about how Jesus didn't say a lot of nice things about people. And in Mark 7, he said, for from within, out of the heart of men, proceed evil thoughts, adulteries, fornications, murders, thefts, covetousness, wickedness, deceit, lasciviousness, an evil eye, blasphemy, pride, foolishness. All these evil things come from within and defile the man. Now, it's interesting, when John the Baptist showed up, or through his disciples, they had a message for Jesus in regards to whether he was actually the Messiah. And so he said, well, just hang around and watch this. And he healed people right in front of their eyes. And they left. And then he said, you know, privately between you and me, there's never been a man like John the Baptist, born of women. Never. For this is he of whom it is written, behold, I send my messenger before thy face, which shall prepare thy way before thee. For I say unto thee, among those that are born of women, there is not a greater prophet than John the Baptist. In Luke, it says he's much more than a prophet, because he was written about. Now, when they asked John, are you Elijah? He had a guilty conscience, and he said no. He knew he was an Elijah-like character, but because he was a sinner, he said no. But Jesus didn't have a guilty conscience, and so he bragged about the fact that he fulfilled scriptures. And this is really, I'm telling you, it's incredible. It's absolutely incredible that Jesus Christ, he said, look, Moses wrote of me. Moses was 1,500 years before him. In a sense, this is greater than his miracles, if you think about it. None of us is 2,015 years old, so we can't go back and say, whoa, I saw him raise the dead. I saw him walk in the water.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Tom Gilberti. If someone had told me when I was 16 or 26 or 36 that the richness of my life would be dependent upon my going on 91-year-old mother taking care of my approaching 60-year-old special sister, and this woman is huffing and puffing and out of breath by the time she gets from one room to the other, I would have been dumbfounded. She asked me last week, did I go to City Hall? I said, yes. Did you speak? Yes. Was it worth it? Well, I gave her my 2 cents, and it was worth a nickel. She kind of chuckled. Last week, I talked about corporate buses. And we could have fined them to $10,000 a stop for every stop, and it comes to $240 million if it's 10 buses in the course of a year. All of these corporate structures could buy the 10 buses for $5 to $10 million. On the other side of that coin is I recommended that these Uber cell phone, telephone companies. If we find them after 2 months, if they didn't have anything for wheelchair accessibility, $25,000 a week, it came to $100,000 a month, $1.2 million a year. If I was the chief of CEO of any of those companies, I would sign that in a flash. So I would have to be, I could be waived of providing wheelchair accessible vans and drivers for the city of San Francisco. Oh, what a voice change. Anyway, with that, you understand what I'm talking about here. We don't want to go backwards. And the rumor has it that these new buses that are being remodeled, the express buses, they actually take out the wheelchair accessibility when they remodel the buses. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any other members of the public who'd like to provide public comment at this time? Seeing none, public comment is closed. And Madam Clerk, at this time, can you go to the adoption without reference to committee items?
Items 17 through 19 are being considered for immediate adoption. A single roll call vote may enact these items. If a member objects, a matter can be removed and considered separately.
Colleagues, does any member want to sever any items? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, can you call the roll?
On items 17 through 19, Supervisor Cohen. Cohen, aye. Supervisor Farrell. Farrell, aye. Supervisor Kim. Kim, aye. Supervisor Marr. Marr, aye. Supervisor Tang.
Aye.
Tang, aye. Supervisor Wiener. Wiener, aye. Supervisor Yee. Yee, aye. Supervisor Avalos. Avalos, aye. Supervisor Breed.
Aye.
Breed, aye. Supervisor Campos.
Aye.
Campos, aye. Supervisor Christensen.
Aye.
Christensen, aye. There are 11 ayes.
Okay, those items are adopted unanimously. Madam Clerk, can we please return to item number 13?
Item 13 is the consideration of the resolution to approve the report of assessment costs.
Okay, have we completed our discussions with some of the property owners? Thank you.
President Breed and members of the board, per your instructions, we have met and conferred with the property owners and other...
I'm sorry, could you just identify yourself again, please?
Gretchen Rude, DPW.
Phil Galley, DPW.
Per your instructions, we have met and conferred with the property owners and other interested parties who have appeared before us to resolve the overdue invoices related to blight on their property. 4 locations were removed from the list. 70 locations remain on the list for assessment on the property tax roll. We have submitted the final list of properties to the clerk of the board.
Okay, and the gentleman who came late, were you able to have a discussion with him?
Yes.
So were there any changes to the list as a result of that conversation?
No.
No? Okay. Supervisor Christensen?
I wondered, Madam Chair, if I could have an opportunity to just address a couple other issues that are on this. How would you prefer that I do that?
Basically, you can ask questions to Department of Public Works at this time.
All right. In looking at the rolls, I see 2 addresses on Grant Avenue, and I strongly suspect that those may be similar to the situations of some of the people that we heard from this evening. Would you guys have any particular knowledge about any of these singular locations? Do you have any information or particulars about them? I mean, what I suspect is that it's probably similar: language barrier, lack of understanding, and that these people didn't understand enough to come down here even today and to complain. And I'm just thinking that we can assess this amount of money, but I suspect this is going to be more administrative dead end going forward. So I just wondered, I mean, my office would be happy to try to help facilitate a better outcome, make them more aware of their obligation to remove graffiti and to address these issues, if that would be helpful.
Oh, very good. Thank you. We appreciate it.
So, Supervisor Christensen, just for clarity, you're concerned that by passing this revised list today, that there won't be any recourse for these individual members to either have these fees adjusted or waived?
Exactly.
Okay, can you please explain what the process is so that we can all understand what's at stake here as a result of passing this as amended today?
Good afternoon, Supervisors. My name is Joseph Topel. I represent the Department of Public Works. And I just want to say that moving forward, when this list goes to, before the list goes to the property tax roll, we have some time to remove properties and clear the list if needs to be.
From my understanding, Mr. Givner, can you clarify that? Because it is my understanding that once we approve this list, it would need to return to the board to be removed. So I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page.
Deputy City Attorney John Givner, I should probably confer with the department. The board has to authorize any properties where we're imposing the lien or collecting. I should confer with the department about the discretion that they have to remove properties once the board has adopted this motion.
So if the board, just for clarity, the board adopts this motion and it will be left, you have the discretion to actually remove one of these properties if anything changes.
Yes, if the property owner pays, or if we can work with the board to make changes if the board agrees.
I think what we're trying to understand, like, for example, the 98-year-old man, he had basically a hardship waiver. And if there are other situations like that where there's a hardship waiver or there's a language barrier and someone who doesn't understand, we want to make sure that by approving this, we're not preventing DPW from removing them entirely.
That is correct.
Okay. Attorney Gibner?
John Gibner again. One option you have today is to continue the matter, not for an additional public hearing where all the individuals would come back and speak again, but just on the ultimate decision of whether to adopt the legislation, and we could provide you further advice over the course of the next week.
And is it possible for us to adopt the ones that have been removed from the list entirely and address those that have not been removed from the list in the future?
Yes, you could do that.
Okay. Supervisor Christensen?
I just had a question. Would another option be to remove the 2 or 3 items that I have questions about and address those separately and approve the remainder of the list?
Yes, that's an option as well.
So through the chair to the members of Public Works. So if I eliminate the last 2 items on the first page, which are Grant Avenue items, would you be able to address those separately at a later date?
Absolutely, Supervisor.
Okay. So do you like to continue those 2 items?
Yes.
To the next meeting of the board?
May 19th.
Okay. So Supervisor Christensen has made a motion to attend those 2 particular items to the meeting of May 19th?
That's correct.
Is there a second? Seconded by Supervisor Tang. Can we take that, colleagues, without objection? Without objection, we'll continue those to the meeting of May 19th.
Thank you.
Thank you. And on the remaining document, not including those items that we continued, colleagues, is there a motion to move this forward? Motioned by Supervisor Cohen, seconded by Supervisor Christensen. Can we take this, colleagues, without objection? Without objection, this item passes as amended. Madam Clerk, can you please read the in memoriams?
Today's meeting will be adjourned in memory of the following beloved individual. On behalf of Supervisor Avalos, for the late retired Deputy Chief Stanley Francis Cord.
Okay, Madam Clerk, is there any other business before us today?
That concludes our business for today.
Thank you all for being here. Ladies and gentlemen, we are adjourned.